Welcome to the Q&A, this time with George.
The first question is, I would love to hear more about the EU strategy. Specifically, do you plan to offer your L2 scaling tech to other projects, institutions, governments in the region who need a compliant environment?
First off, let me say we're not building a fully new layer 2 stack, right? I mean, at the end of the day, it's on existing layer 2 roll-up technology, but with our own regulatory and compliance things embedded. But yes, definitely, we are going to offer it to European institutions, even governments if they're interested, right?
Will Vision Chain support decentralized nodes to ensure network security and scalability? What exact role do they play in the ecosystem?
So we do anticipate at this current state that anybody will be able to run their own node, spin it up, and achieve network state independently. However, transaction sequencing will at least initially be centralized because we got to comply with DORA, for example, European regulation. So it can't be decentralized.
Then as a follow-up maybe, what types of nodes are you planning? Validators, sequencers, full nodes, light nodes? Is there a hybrid structure that the EU regulatory requirements takes into account?
So Vision Chain will include validator nodes and a sequencer. To meet compliance requirements, it's going to be a hybrid system, right? So there's going to be a compliance layer basically in front of the sequencer to screen the transactions before they're processed.
And also very important, of course, for our community. Will it be possible for the community to operate their own nodes, or will it be limited to selected institutional partners?
Yes, we're planning to allow it. To basically have the community operate and independently derive network state and submit transactions as well. But full decentralization of the sequencing is not the immediate priority, really, right? I mean, the focus is on credible neutrality and transparency, and the governance will then be through a permission security council. That in general is also something that I think needs to be understood, right? There will be governance for the Vision token done by Vision token holders, but for the Vision chain, it will be what we call, a permissioned council of experts made up of the founding institutional partners of the chain. As much as that's a fun idea, I think everybody, if you think it through to the second or third step, needs to say, okay, the holders of the Vision token should not necessarily have the power over what big financial institutions then do on this chain. Otherwise, it will never become the go-to infrastructure layer for European finance.
All right, then another in-depth question. What minimal hardware and software requirements will you recommend for node operators to enable as many participants as possible?
Honestly, I think it's a really cool question and I love the energy, but we'll give more details about that at a later stage, I think, yeah.
Okay, and then as a deep dive once again, will Vision staking be required to run a node?
No, Vision staking will not be required to run a node.
Are there staking rewards or other incentives for node operators?
Currently not planned. Incentives will be more focused on the developers and the asset issuers rather than the node operators. I like that there is interest in the community to become a node operator, but this is more going to be a if you want, you can, and not a we want you to actively, right?
Now to a very interesting question, I think that everyone wants to know. What concrete use cases for RWAs and everyday tokenizations are you planning on Vision Chain?
I think the initial use case and the initial most interesting one, also on the institutional side, is bringing real-world assets on-chain to then use them as collateral for borrowing and lending, basically making more efficient corporate treasury management and DeFi borrowing and lending. I think that's going to be the thing. Then broader everyday tokenization will obviously depend on regulatory clarity, right? This is, especially for the EU, still quite new ground. And obviously market readiness, right? I mean, I think when you look at projects and pioneers, especially from the US or Asia, getting the feeling that we're kind of late already is sort of what you see in the community. But when we then talk to the relevant financial institutions in Europe, I think we are still quite early here, right? So I think at the end of the day, the market needs to be ready for it as well. But Vision Chain is designed to support all of that as the adoption grows, right? At the end of the day, we are now building the infrastructure and there will be projects on it, but I wouldn't expect Vision Chain to be a complete product when it launches, right? It's really to be there for this transition and to start this transition with the partners and with the financial institutions.
All right, how does Vision Chain ensure scalability for institutional users, especially with cross-chain transactions and high volumes?
A high performance sequencer, I think, is super important, right? Because that really enables us to make the most of the layer 2 technology and the rollup system, and then dedicated block space for institutional users, right? So that's also what we now call the founding partners. They will be able to get dedicated block space, because at the end of the day, there just needs to be some prioritization here.
Can Vision Chain offer what worldwide the Binance Chain offers? My question is whether Vision could one day become the BNB of Europe.
I think the comparison is a fun one, Vision and BNB, right? And looking at the BNB token, I think everybody wants to be that. I think when it comes to our approach to infrastructure and to the chain, Binance is very, very, very much on the retail-driven side, and obviously, knowing Binance, not that focused on regulation. I think the better comparison would be Base, right? Becoming the base of Europe, because we're trying to specifically build compliant infrastructure for on-chain finance in Europe, right? So I would say base of Europe more than European BNB.
Is there an approach to make the Vision Chain gas fees in only Vision, or will you be able to choose your gas token freely?
It's definitely not going to be only Vision, right? I mean, I think we're open to having Vision also be used as a gas token, but I think at the end of the day, the real goal is to have gas paid in euro-denominated stablecoins. Obviously, I understand that as a token community, you might want it to be Vision, right? Because that's a very, very important use case. But having the gas in a volatile asset is toxic to institutional use cases. They're never going to go for that. It also comes down to this product philosophy topic I've talked about in the last Q&A, where on the one hand, yes, you want to have use cases, but on the other hand, you don't want to limit the scale that the products themselves can become. If you can then use those revenues to bring value back to the token, I think that's a more powerful combination than enforcing this like Vision-only mentality.
Yes, I think you have to always have the big picture in mind, right? So who do you cater this product to?
Yes.
And it's not retail users, not only retail users, but mainly financial institutions in Europe that are very conservative and that really have another risk profile that retail users have, right?
Absolutely, right? I mean, it really comes down to this compliance and regulation are the roads that this financial system will be built on. Like very small fluctuations, if you do something for a while on an institutional scale, are massive, right? So it's not about I want to do this one thing and I don't care if Vision is up or down for this transaction. It's about just making it super, super predictable, and for that you need a stable coin. And also the euro-denominated part is really important, because if you look at, in general, DeFi, right? Creating this euro-denominated DeFi ecosystem. Because I mean, in the last year or two, if you were like earning yield on US dollar stablecoins, you basically still lost money if you were in the Eurozone, right? So it's about creating a Euro home in the Eurozone for this, and yeah, so that needs to be at least the main gas token as well.
Hey Vision team, I've studied the Canton network, which is now moving $1 trillion RWAs in the network. Privacy, cost, time efficiency, and individual blockchain parameters are perfectly individually configurable there. How is the Vision Layer 2 supposed to keep up with this technology?
I think Vision Chain fundamentally differs from what Canton Network is trying to provide, right? Canton Network is really a private interbank settlement layer, and Vision Chain wants to prioritize public market access a lot more. So they have this walled garden approach, which we also use on some of our products, for example, for a wallet, but it's really institutional efficiency overall. And we want to specifically utilize a standard Ethereum rollup technology and then sort of build a compliant public layer 2 to bridge institutions and the broader DeFi economy. I think that's really where it differs. So it's not so much, I think we're playing a different game, right? It's not so much about how can we keep up with this technology, it's more about which approach will in the end be the more successful. The interbank settlement layer or bridging institutions with where the economic activity in DeFi is already happening.
Okay, another very interesting question. Will there be smart contracts for real estate escrow and purchases?
Technically, definitely feasible to have that on Vision Chain, but I don't see it as being something that we are going to build directly or that Bitpanda is going to build directly. At the end of the day, Vision Chain is an infrastructure product, right, that will enable third parties to then build such applications. I think it's a nice idea, but is there a business case and is there a market for it? A big enough market to sustain it? And I think time will tell.
Is the launchpad dependent on the Vision Chain, or could that be added at any time?
Launchpad is not dependent on Vision Chain. Vision Chain is not dependent on the Launchpad, but there can be quite strong synergies, right? They basically complement each other. On the one hand, you have the infrastructure Vision Chain, and then you have this distribution and access layer for new assets in the Launchpad. For example, a new asset gets listed on Vision Chain and you distribute it via the Launchpad, or we attract a new Launchpad project and they then launch on Vision Chain instead of another chain or on multiple chains, right? So I think the synergies are definitely there, but I wouldn't say that no Vision Chain needs to happen before Launchpad is here.
Okay, and then last but not least, who provides the liquidity for the transactions running over the Vision Chain?
So liquidity provision will be permissionless, so anyone can provide liquidity. We do expect, however, just because of knowing basically the asset accounts of the big financial institutions, that most of the liquidity will be provided specifically for the assets that these institutions are launching by the institutions themselves. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. This gives you already quite a good overview and at least a bit more of an idea of the scope and what we're going to do, what we're not going to do with Vision Chain, and yeah, paint a bit of a picture of where we're heading. See you next time. Thank you for watching.